Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We're so happy to have you here with us today. We have opened up our Zoom webinar room, and we're going to take just a moment for our attendees who are joining us live today to join our space. But I want to welcome you to our executive symposium brought to you by Active Choices, Inc. and the Positive Energy Workplace Initiative. So for those of you who are joining us live today, you can let us know that you can hear us, add into the chat, and we will be saying hello soon. For those of you who are watching our recording, thank you so much for sharing your space with us today. And we know that a lot of you are going to be watching this recording, so it means a lot to us that you are taking this time to learn together as we all continue to become even better leaders and create even more positive energy cultures. So my name is Jenny Wiley. I am the Director of Programming for Active Choices, and I have the honor of moderating our panel discussion today. So our recording today is going to be made available after our sessions. So we invite everyone here to get present and set your intention for our time together so that you can really be able to listen to this discussion. Know that you'll be able to come back, take notes, feel the energy of everything that we're sharing today, and be able to grow together. So a little bit about Active Choices. At Active Choices, Inc., we believe that leaders have the power to co-create vibrant, productive, and authentically positive company culture where each person can grow and thrive and create bottom line impact. And we do this through our training and teaching of the IEP methodology, which is ACI's proprietary framework. We focus on the intentions, energy, and presence that we show up within our roles. And we help leaders and companies balance performance, self-care, and impact. And we're going to be talking a lot about that today. So our intention for our executive symposium space is to create this space for growth-minded executives and leaders to connect, share insights. We all get to learn best practices together, all in the interest of supporting healthy and authentically positive leadership and workplace culture. So if anyone has specific questions as we're going through our session today, feel free to use the Q&A in Zoom. We do have some other questions that were submitted from the audience in the registration form. So if space permits, we will make sure to leave time for that at the end of our time together. So let's dive in. I'm going to start with some introductions. Thanks to our panelists who are joining us today. We first have Anese Cavanaugh, who is the CEO of Active Choices, Inc. and the founder of the IEP Method and the Positive Energy Workplace Initiative. Say hello, Anese.
Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. Thank you to all of our panelists. Thank you, Jenny.
Absolutely. So happy to hold the space. Next up, we have Mick Lee, who is Chief Administrative Officer for MBO Partners. Mick, thank you so much for joining us live today.
Thanks for including me. I'm really excited to have the conversation.
We're so happy to have your perspective today. We also have Woodson Witt, who is the Vice President of Safety and Human Resources at Modern Transportation. Woodson, so happy to have you here balancing out our masculine and feminine energy today.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. So glad. And then Kim Ahearn, who is Director of Global Accounts with United Airlines. Kim, it's so wonderful as always to have you in spaces with us.
Honored to be here and with this company. It's wonderful.
Absolutely. So the great thing is that each of these leaders has experienced the IEP method in different ways. So we've invited everyone to share their unique perspectives, their leadership insights, and their thoughts on how we can all impact workplace culture. So we'll learn through each other's experiences today. So we're going to start with an opening question so that we can all be on the same page, especially if you're new to Active Choices. So we're going to start with Anese, actually. So let's have you start with where ACI came from, just in a nutshell. And then also, what is the IEP method and why is it so important to be talking about this in our conversations about creating healthy workplace culture?
Okay, great. All right, I'm going to do it in a nutshell.
Okay, great.
ACI started about 22 years ago, actually, and it came from a desire to really help create more impact in the world through companies and through leaders. And to create this impact without people burning themselves out, without people doing damage in their culture with that, with actually to create positive impact, feel good doing so, and then create the most optimal return on investment as a business as possible. And what I noticed when I started doing this work, I started actually in doing leadership development and culture consulting and all that. But I was integrating the kinesiology and energy management and energy leadership and all these different methodologies that I had learned from working with companies, but also from my own background. And ultimately, out of that, noticing what happened if leaders did not have their intentions, energy, and presence really, really aligned. It did not matter how much leadership development they were doing, or training and learning, or culture change, or innovation, or engagement work. If the IEP, the intentions, energy, and presence, weren't in alignment, they were missing a huge piece of the potential, and often they were doing more harm than good. So over years, in really experimenting with this, in about 2009, I started to build out what is now called the IEP method, which stands for your intentional energetic presence. And our intentional energetic presence is literally about how do we show up in the world for ourselves, and how do we show up for others so that we can create that impact in a very sustainable, life-giving, energized way, and so that ultimately we activate the energy of our workforces to do their best work. So there's that a good nutshell? Okay.
That was amazing. It was so perfect. And I think that it really tackles something that even we were talking about in the green room, in the practice room before we jumped on, around how often we are not talking about the importance of self-care and personal improvement as it relates to business and the companies that we work in, how this is kind of a new conversation that we've been having around energy. And yet ACI has been talking about it for a long time. So I'm really happy that more and more people are starting to talk about this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just a little add a footnote on that. One of the things that we really focus on, everyone focuses on, companies tend to focus on engagement, innovation. So they're measuring engagement. And an invitation as we start to go through this conversation is to start to notice that engagement is a lagging indicator. By the time you're actually measuring engagement, it's already done. Like, it's done. And it's also a symptom of the energy. It is a symptom of the IEP of your workforce and your leadership. So that engagement, those engagement numbers you have, if you look underneath them, it's actually, you can trace it back to what is the energy of my workforce? What's the energy of my leaders? How are they showing up? And so then you can look at this and go even further, looking at innovation, training and learning and development. But the thing that I think is the most exciting for all of us is that while engagement is a lagging indicator, energy is a leading indicator, and you can change it in the moment. So if you don't like what's happening in your innovation, in your initiatives, and your culture, you go back to the energy of your workforce and the individual responsibility for each leader to show up well. That can be changed like this, which then will change your engagement. So I just want to hit that one right off the bat. Okay, great.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say that you are a leading expert in the actions that we can take to align our energy, especially because of the books that you've written, Contagious Culture and Contagious You, which I know we're going to talk about throughout the session today. But these types of leadership books are starting to come more into the conversation, and that's really important. So thanks for that. All right. So moving on to our other panelists, Woodson, let's start with you. So if you'll share just a little bit of background for our audience around what's your role in the company that you're at, the industry that you're in, and then how were you first introduced to the IEP method?
Sure, absolutely. As you announced, I'm the Vice President of Safety and Human Resources for Modern Transportation. So I take on that dual role of being almost the one assigned to be the protector or the innovator of our company culture that we have so much to build, but also safety is so important in the transportation field because I'm in transportation and logistics, and we're a heavy truck carrier, and so safety is the number one role and the number one aspect that we always focus on in transportation, but culture drives so much of that, and I think that's what we're just discovering, is that it's that mindset, it's that culture, it's what you bring to the table and connect really authentically and meet in the organization that drives safety. And so when you're unified in that, and you can be unified in that, it really does make a huge impact. And I was actually introduced to the IEP method. Our leadership team went to a leadership seminar. Anese was the speaker,
Mhm.
and I've studied setting your intentions and energy for many years, but I almost feel like I lost sight of it when you get into the corporate world and everyone says, okay, here's all these great leaders out there. Here's all these great leadership books, and you just start reading and piling into these leadership books, and then you read about all these great leaders and you think, okay, I've learned about all these great leaders and I see what they've done, and you're telling me what they've done, but how do you get there? How do you become that great leader? What's the how? And then you're sitting there and Anese talks, and my past history and just belief and just deep knowledge, just understanding and truth of what energy is and what that does for someone. But then she talks about it at a leadership level, and it was just an aha moment for me. And it was like, this is how you get there. This is it. This is what I've been looking for. So that's really how I was introduced to the IEP method, and how I grabbed a hold of it, and I've just been a student from that time. So.
Yeah, amazing. We're all practicing it all the time. Anese and I even say that we're always learning about new dimensions of the work. So, and it's critically important work. It sounds like in your company, Woodson, even to the point where you are protecting the safety of your employees and guaranteeing their lives, even.
And the
So,
motoring public too. I mean, that's the
absolutely.
thing. It's just not my team members that are out on the road, but it's everyone who's on the road with them.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for doing that work. That's amazing. All right. Let's move over to Kim now. So Kim, if you'll give us a little view of your position in the company that you're in, and then also when you were introduced to the IEP method.
Sure. I have the great privilege of being among our sales leadership team at United Airlines. We focus on our travel agency and corporate community and bringing agency and corporate programs into the marketplace. And so I lead a team of really fine sales folks that go out and are on the front lines in the daily, bringing the brand of United to its customer base, and it's our travel agencies. So it's an honorable place to be. It's a fantastic company to work for. Like Woodson's, transportation is key. Safety is always number one. And getting to that great, healthy culture at an airline is challenging because there's so many variables, and we're doing such a great job at the top. And it's making sure we can continue to cascade that through. I stumbled upon Anese very randomly at a conference, just went in to listen, and it ties to Mick. She may bring it up, but I walked into a conference and listened to Anese. And similar to Woodson, I said, this is what I've been practicing internally, and I've never been able to have the words in a corporate space to connect them, to talk to them, to speak to them in a way that Anese had brought it to the table. And I was like, this is it. Just as Woodson said, this is the differential. And yet I do it. How do I bring that and weave that into my leadership style and into my communities? So when I got a chance, I found Anese through conversations that she was doing like this online. And I said, I'm going to jump in. And I jumped in September and did the 2-day deep dive training and all the tools. And then they were big on getting their app running and going. And I went all in and said, let me figure this out while I spent the time. And I've just loved it ever since. And so I've been trying to cascade that out and about wherever I go and bring United further along with some of these practices as well.
Amazing. Yeah, Kim, you've been a great champion. It's been a pleasure getting to know you through this work and seeing your growth as a leader too. So thanks for being a part of it. All right, Mick, we're excited to have your perspective here today as well, because you have been connected with Anese and this work for a very long time. So if you'll share with us your current role and your position that you're in right now, but then also we'd love to hear a little bit of a nutshell of your journey with the IEP method.
Sure. I've known Anese for just over a decade, I believe now. And my role currently is with MBO Partners, and MBO essentially is we have over 100,000 entrepreneurs, and our role really is bringing entrepreneurs together with large enterprise to help them to work compliantly. And you have these entrepreneurs that really wanted to own their own path. And when you think about MBO has been around for over 20 years. And in this world today where people want to choose how, where, when, and the way that they work, it really is the future of work. And so I'm thrilled to be able to have a role as the Chief Administrative Officer to, I have HR, I'm responsible for the culture, but the way that we work at MBO is that each individual is actually responsible for the culture.
Mhm.
I have risk, legal, marketing, events, and a collection of other areas. When the fundamental piece and what's closest to my heart has been always the people component of it. And what really drew me to MBO, and I'm not just saying it because he's my boss, but the CEO is someone that Anese knows, and he is someone that really embodies energy and how you show up, and the treatment of others. And when you think about what Anese has built and the mantra of all of the work that we're talking about, you're going to see me throughout our discussion. I'm going to look down because I'm going to be also referring to a couple of quotes and what she does, because all of her work is really a point of reference, because it is, as Woodson said, actionable. It gives us the tools that we need to use. But here's the fundamental difference in a lot of the things that I've come across and read. How you show up matters, but it's not just about work. It's about your full self. It's how to be a better version of yourself. I applied the IEP method to my son. I'm a single mom. I applied to how we selected his college in the right decision for that. So this is a way for you to look at how you want to change your entire life. And so I encourage you that, unlike the other methodologies that you work, that you might look to for self-improvement, it improves yourself as a leader. And we're all leaders, by the way. It doesn't matter what your business card says. Every one of us has the ability to lead in every discussion that we're having, in every meeting that we're in, and every situation we're in. How we show up matters. So I know that you've got more. I don't want to talk too long on this opening, but this has changed the way that I live.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm hearing also, Mick, the impact of the power that we each have as leaders to positively influence those around us. Our energy truly is contagious. And when we are in a position where we can model that to others, there's tremendous impact from that. Absolutely.
You're right. Exactly
And
right,
what do
Jenny.
you want to chime in on?
I was just gonna say, as I'm listening to all three of you, it's just so interesting. I love the way we've pulled this group together, because we have Woodson, your company. You're all pretty brand new to the work. You all joined the Alliance this year, actually. You joined the Positive Energy Workplace Alliance. Kim, you're fairly new to the work. You've been in it. It started for you with a keynote, and then going into training, and now in all access on the membership platform. And Mick, you've seen it now over 10 years. With all sorts of different audiences. From maybe just say a little bit about that, the different audiences. Yeah,
sure.
great.
So we first were, when we first met, the first audience that I brought you in on was financial services, and it was a series across 50,000 employees in over 100 countries, and that was a series that really was actually the introduction from that CEO for a financial services firm. And it was a work plan that really was an extended plan over the course of a couple of months. The second company was Witt, which is a women's leadership nonprofit that Kim had mentioned, that she and I were involved in. And I happen to be a big fan of Kim's myself and the work that she does. So Kim was one of the women that helped me in putting that together. So then you shift from financial services, 50,000 people in 100 countries, to a women's leadership nonprofit. And then most recently, she presented to 50 entrepreneurs. And that was a group of, we had a couple of, there was a couple of millionaires in the room. There were a couple of authors in the room, doctors, financial professionals, there was if you named the type of person in that room, we might have had them, right? When you think about the different types of people in that room, and it resonated across the board. So that's the difference in this work. And where previously these, some people may have historically called some of this soft skills. These are power skills that are financially that every company needs to have this. They're financial distinguishing factors that make a difference in every organization.
Yes, I love that. Thank you for painting that picture. It really gives a really nice overview of the transferability of the frameworks that we're all practicing. I love that. And it actually segues into one of our other questions that I'd like to roll into now. And let's start with Kim on this one, because I know that you're kind of, in a way, you're kind of like an individual practitioner of the IEP method within your company. So give us some examples of how you've been utilizing the IEP method within your team, within your department. What does that look like for you from a tangible perspective?
A great question. Well, as Anese likes to say, culture all starts and ends with you, right? So the first step is to make sure you are bringing your whole self all of the time. And in a high-paced, rapidly changing environment, that has to be a very conscious practice, right? Because you're getting hit left, right, and center in today's world with all types of things. So if you can't continue to bring yourself back to center and ground yourself, your effectiveness, your efficiency, your speed of voice, you'll hear a lot of times with me, I can talk really, really fast, born and raised in New York. That's how you got to do it. So I have to work on making sure I can be heard by my audience, and manage my energy to do that is key. So first off, it's taking care of yourself, making sure you're showing up. And I think as Mick said, you do that across the board and it helps every part of your life. You first start with you as a person, with your peers, as a leader, as a mother. I have a mother of 2 teenage boys, and then just the friends around you. And you just keep representing yourself that way. And it's amazing how contagious the energy becomes. Just you resetting yourself, even visibly in a conversation, taking the time to take the deep breath, to find the pause, just can really shift both your effectiveness as well as the people that are really, are in the room with you. And now even more importantly, on these Zoom calls, where we're not just face to face and we can take a moment, but where we've got 5, 10, 20 people in a room, and you're trying to have that same impact on your own energy as well as the room around you. So you have to be even more versatile. So I do a lot of that work. Personally, I'm a cancer survivor. I actually like to say cancer conqueror in my late 30s. So this energy work started then. I learned very consciously and purposefully that my intentions on how I was going to get through breast cancer at 36, 37 was going to make all the difference. And it's just the way it was going to be. And I was just very, very blessed that that intention, that energy, and that constant resetting ended up 17 years later cancer-free. So I've kept that as a modality, always looking for the next thing. So when I came across Anese and just that container to put it all in and bring it into my work, it just was beautifully aligned because it gave me the words and the tools to do it. So, leaning in and now becoming more of that type of leader. So you got your IQ, you got your EQ now, your empathy, but now even your body centricity, right? Where are you in your body? What's your BQ is my new kind of favorite go-to. Where am I in my body today? How am I showing up? Anese is wonderful tool in the IEP method where you actually take stock of your energy before you walk into a room, when you start the day, just checking on your physical factors, your sleep, your nutrition, your water, your exercise, all of those things, even before you start your day, and how when you play with those, you can see the impact change and up level.
Yeah, absolutely. I can speak to that. It's a very cumulative effect when you start practicing that awareness. Anese, what comes up for you?
Yeah, I just want to underline something that's so important and brilliant, what you just offered, Kim, which is, first of all, I love your story, and I'm so happy you're healthy. I'm so happy. Cancer conqueror, I got goosebumps when you said that. But you mentioned IQ and EQ. And so a lot of times people will see this work and be like, well, EQ, my EQ is really good, or my IQ is really good. You can have great IQ and great EQ and still have not awesome IEP. So the IEP underneath it, the way that even if my EQ and my IQ is fantastic, if my intentions, energy, and presence are not in alignment, and if I'm not taking care of myself, I don't care how good my EQ is. And if my intentions aren't clean, I can actually start to use EQ for manipulation. So it's just another piece where
great point.
This work, there's 70 different tools and frameworks and all these different ways that we address work depending on what's going on for a company or for the people going through our platform. But that's a really important piece, is that if you think about IEP is like your food coloring in water. And no matter how awesome the skill is, or your EQ or your PhDs or your MBAs, you can have all of that. But if you're not showing up well, if you're not being intentional, if you're not taking care of your energy, if you're not being responsible for the energy you're projecting on people, and you're not present, you're probably going to do more harm than good. And you're at least not going to get the optimal impact. So thank you, Kim. I know I just jumped in, but I just was,
That's great.
my mouth was watering.
Yeah, that's exactly the intention, Anese. Thank you so much for weaving that together there. I'd love to turn to Woodson now to share what are some examples of how you all have utilized it. You can say for yourself, for your team, whatever's coming up for you.
Absolutely. So one of the things that I love about the IEP method and the energy work is it provides an opportunity, like Kim was saying, I can connect authentically with myself, right? I understand myself at a deeper level. And when you can do that and take care of yourself, so we're all busy. And everyone on the call is busy. You know, I'm a father of 4 children. I've been married for 23 years. I'm a level 1 CrossFit instructor. I compete internationally in 2 different sports and nationally. And my kids are extremely active. And obviously the business is very active and busy. And when you can connect authentically with yourself and you meet yourself where you're at and understand that, and you can take care of yourself mentally, you can take care of yourself physically, and when you can do that, you can set your intentions and you start that energetic bubble around yourself, and then it is contagious. And so people start asking, how in the world do you do X, Y, and Z? And you say, well, because I've been able to, I set my intentions, I connect with myself authentically. And so with my team, you know, when somebody comes in and they're just, and you can start to feel their energy. You know right where they're at, and you can meet them where they're at, and you can start breaking things down, and you just say, okay, you know, where are you at right now? How are you showing up? How do you feel? And then you can ask them, okay, what kind of impact do you want to have on this, or what kind of impact do you want to make on your team, or what kind of outcome do you want on this? And then when they tell you, say, okay, well, what is your internal belief system right now about that and about yourself? And then you can start to talk about the actions and things that you can take. And that, I mean, it's just dripping the teachings slowly and starting to get to change a mindset, to change a belief, and finally they kind of start getting it, and it's like, oh. And so then when you're in a meeting and you start talking about, hey, how's everyone's energy today? How are we all showing up? And people realize what you're saying, and then they start to internalize and start to really think about themselves and how they're showing up, and maybe why am I at a 4 today, or why am I feel like I'm overworked, or I'm busy, or I'm stressed, and the one thing I love about this work, and the one thing that I feel like a lot of other energy work or maybe leadership work is that Anese taught me this work, is that it is okay to not feel good. The ick, like, it's okay. And we all feel that. Like, as a leader, you do not have to constantly 100% pretend that everything is perfect and okay, because it isn't. And it's okay to acknowledge that. And it's and the real growth, and as a leader, you teach your team, the real growth comes when you acknowledge your stress, when you acknowledge the pain, when you acknowledge the hurt, and you meet it and you deal with it appropriately. And that's where the real growth comes, right? Absolutely. And energetically, the team starts to just connect with each other. And when we're in a meeting, you can feel and feed off energy. And if somebody is open enough to say, hey, I'm having a hard day, you know, I'm not doing well today, I'm at a 4. And we know that, and we know how to bring that energy level up, right? We know how to help them level up. And that's where I've really been able to see a great impact, is that you start connecting authentically with a team, and that's where the real growth happens, I feel like.
Absolutely. And using the IEP method creates that accessibility and that language and that bridge that we're all talking about, so that we can bring our whole selves into our work. and still perform at a very high level, even when we may not be feeling physically 100% or mentally 100% or emotionally 100%.
And it's a
Anese,
safe space.
oh, sorry.
It's a safe space, right? I mean, that's the nice thing. It brings
Absolutely.
space to everybody. And you perform better when you are in a place of safety, among others. So
That's great. Yes.
Yeah, you get more, that safety is essential for people being as creative as possible. That safety is essential for them giving each other feedback. That safety is essential for being able to have them go out and sell more. If you're in sales, like
Yes.
they've got to feel that expansive energy that allows them to go, all right, I may not be having the best day right now, but I actually can talk to Woodson or Kim or Mick or George. You know, we love George. And there's a safe space to do that. So now I can move through that energy faster. And, you know, I just wrote down like 10 different notes, and I'm not going to do them all, but you are talking about some really important pieces in here, which is one, you're talking about, you're staying curious with your people as opposed to getting judgmental. So when somebody is in the room and you're noticing the energy is low, what I'm hearing you say is you're peppering this in ways that are really authentic for modern transportation. First of all, I just want to acknowledge that you're doing it very authentically. So you're not forcing it on everyone, which I think is really, really important. But when you're seeing things that are off, or somebody's IEP is off, or the energy's low, or there's something funky going on, what I hear you doing is you're leaving space for curiosity of like, what might be happening over here? And how are you doing? And okay, you're a 4, you're a -4. Great, what's going on? And so you've just created more safety because you're coming from curiosity versus judgment or aggravation. The other thing that I'm really hearing you say is part of the reason you're able to do so much that you're doing, because you have a very, very full, rich life with a responsibility for a lot of people you lead and that you love. And the way that one of the ways it is supporting you is you're holding your space. So you're holding your space. You're using probably, you know, like the bubble, the reboot, like that maybe the 5 steps to intentional impact to really help you be clear about what is it you want to create? How do you want to show up? And then this is the magic. When you're going in to work with other people and they may not be at that same space, or maybe they're having a really hard day, or maybe their energy is really negative, because this happens because we're human. Instead of getting sucked into what's happening, instead of matching the lowest vibration in the room, you're able to hold your state and come from a place of care and curiosity. Well, what's going on for you? Well, what impact did you actually want to have? Well, what are your, you know what I mean? So then you're using the 5 steps to intentional impact while you hold your space, while you did a reboot. So it's a really beautiful design of what you just shared and how you're pulling so many of these tools in, and you're not saying to people, oh, by the way, I'm doing IEP to you.
no, no, not at all. Not at all.
You're using this methodology as something that is nourishing and expansive and life-giving, which is ultimately going to create more authentic and sustainable change and resilience in your people.
Absolutely. And I can also say I use this on I have 4 children, 2 of them are teenagers.
Oh yeah.
And so we use this a lot at home. So even when mom's having a hard day and I come home and mom's had a day, right? And so then it's just so fun to see this work within the family dynamic as well. And my mom lives with us as well. So that also brings
lots of dynamics.
And we have 4 German Shepherds. So that
4 German Shepherds. Oh my gosh. So you have access you have access because you're in foundations to Intro to IEP. So it would be worth, if you haven't done it yet, it would be worth checking out the Intro to IEP Method course, because there's 22 different IEP sheets for different examples of how to handle things, including the one that I used when I was teaching my daughter how to drive.
oh yeah.
So make sure you see those, but we look at everything from how do you give feedback? How do you lead a meeting? How do you do a keynote? How do you prepare for exiting somebody with grace? How do you prepare? Like, we even had somebody who used this to tell their in-laws they were getting a divorce, and they used their 5 steps to do it in the most caring, loving way possible. So make sure, and that's for all of you and anybody that's watching this that has access, make sure you check out that bonus section that has those very specific things, because it does go home with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just mention here too, Anese, that's one of the things that I love about all the programming that we have, is that it's not just a methodology. It's not just a very accessible methodology, we have proven tools and a comprehensive suite of resources available for everyone who works with us, so that it is really accessible and it's kind of a no-brainer. Okay, even though I may not have all of these memorized, I know where I can go to look into other resources that I might want to practice, or best practices for giving feedback and things like that. So that's great. All right, let's bring Mick's voice back into the room. I'd love to have you share, I know you were mentioning before, maybe some examples that you had around how you've utilized the IEP method. And so, yeah, floor is yours, Mick.
I love what just happened too, because Anese has taught us, but she's taught so many more people than she'll ever know, because it's also the organic and authentic coming through, right? It's not about people knowing about the process. There's two things that comes to mind in this conversation. One was in some recent challenges that my son was having in a college discussion with professors. He actually used the words, because I said, well, how are you going to prepare for this meeting? Which was, rather challenging. And he said to me, I know how to show up. I know how I'm going to show up. And I was like, it's the IEP. So I knew what it was, because he and I had conversations about that. And I had a meeting literally just yesterday that I'm thrilled to share with you, because this is so critical in how this comes into practice so many times, if not, a couple times a day. So let me just tell you a quick story. So I have a situation where I have someone that's out on leave. I'm covering the role. And so with this, I'm meeting with contractors who I've never met with, members of my team who are 1 and 2 levels below me, who are not accustomed to meeting with me directly. I joined the meeting. I was a couple minutes late, and there was some questions around hours and responsibilities and who was doing what and what my expectations were. The conversation was already underway. People are nervous. People want to meet expectations. There was a miscommunication email that had come through. And so the conversations were happening, and people started answering the questions that were underway, and there was a bit of crosstalk and everything else with several people on the call. And I said, let's hold on a second. Let's pause for a moment. First of all, we're going to solve everything. Just take a deep breath. Let's pause for a second, and let's set the intention for this meeting, and let's get on the same page. I outlined 4 or 5 things, which was an agreement, which was not an agreement. And I said, by the time this meeting ends, in our 25 minutes, we're going to solve these problems together. We're going to resolve everything, and we're going to get to exactly where we need to be. And we spent just 30 seconds just breathing, relaxing, and I could see the energy shift just from the people on the camera. And we resolved everything in that conversation. And so when you apply these methods, and when you think about what Anese has taught all of us, and when, for those that are listening in this conversation, you can see on her social media, you can see on the website, but that is the tip of the iceberg in what these teachings are. So that's really just the beginning. But I was so grateful to be able to have learned as much as I have, because I apply these things every day. It really worked really well.
That's such a great illustration, Mick. I'm so glad that you have that example, because it also shows the sustainability of taking that pause, where it may be perceived that you taking that 30-second pause, we don't have time for that. We got to keep moving. We got to get to these answers. And in reality, you were able to get more done and build trust, and it's a more sustainable outcome for the future, all in inviting everyone to take that pause. So that's really beautiful.
And you have to it's about recognizing the energy of each individual person too, right? That is a piece that's really critical, and creating that safe place. That's all part of IEP, truly.
Yeah. Thank you for modeling that. Anese, what do you want to share?
Yeah, well, I gotta.
I love it. Keep going.
Because we're basically getting an IEP course here. We're getting some good like
Yeah.
refreshers. So I hope that everybody that's watching this and listening to this, I hope this is giving you little things to start doing immediately. Because that's the other thing. It doesn't have to be this huge thing that all of a sudden you're like, okay, well, it's going to be this huge, heavy thing we got to do, and it's going to be so much work. You can start right this second. You can make a decision right this second to start to show up differently. And then the choice is yours of how much you want to learn how to do that.
Mhm.
But Mick, a couple things. One, your awareness going into that room of what was happening in the room. You knew you were a few minutes late. You knew there were nerves in the room. You knew all the, so your awareness of the energy, like that is a leadership skill to be able to go into a room and know what you're dealing with in terms of what emotions might be in the room. We see this all the time when leaders try to kind of override that and just work through it. So I just want to like acknowledge that awareness is something I think you take for granted that is so important. I wish we could get more leaders to have that more quickly. The other thing is, had you just pushed through yesterday? Because a lot of times, to Jenny's point, okay, we don't have time to do this right now, so we're going to keep going. Had you pushed through, you would have had people in their heads, not present, probably multitasking. It would have been exhausting actually, because there's a lot of energy draining because people are trying to manage all those different pieces. And ultimately you would have had people leaving that room, not feeling great about the outcomes. And you probably would have had to schedule more meetings afterwards to clean up what didn't get done in the first one. And so I just want to like triple applause. You named it, you rebooted, you were aware, you came in, you revisited agreements. And you also did the magical thing of saying, hey, we're going to get this done. Everyone has a collective moment to just be, and then let's move forward together. So I think you just gave us a little bit of a masterclass on entering into a meeting and how do you facilitate that.
Yeah, this is great. So I'm gonna have us put a finer point on this with our next question too, because we're discussing this example of how accessible and usable the methodology is in a meeting setting. What are some other situations that we all have interacted with in the past where maybe we hadn't had that awareness about intentional energetic presence, or things that we've noticed that are outcomes before being introduced to the IEP method, and then now what's happening afterwards? And so if anyone has an immediate example, otherwise I'm gonna, Kim, I figured you might have something.
It's so fun to spend time here with you all.
Yeah.
I have two. So the first one that Anese and Mick just talked on, slowing down to go fast. I've heard Anese say this most recently an awful lot. Slow down to go fast. And that's not just before the meeting or in the meeting. It's literally when you're planning your strategy, when you're setting your goals for the year. Where do I got to slow down in order to meet these goals? Yeah, they're super fast. They're super intense. They have to happen now. But if I go too fast, I'll miss the mark. So how do I slow down to go fast strategically in my plans, both, for the meeting itself and then overall? And then the other one that I wanted to bring up, which is a little bit different, is giving and receiving feedback. One of the things employees say, I've said, I don't get recognized. Nobody sees what I do. I'm doing all these things and they don't feel recognition. So learning to receive recognition is a big piece of what Anese and the team talks about in their trainings. And how do you receive that information? What does it mean to you? Are you taking it in? Are you hearing it? And once I put that lens on myself and was honest with myself to see when I take in and I hear, I'm really good at hearing the negative, but I don't always hear the positive. And so once I start to receive what people are saying and with the intent that they're saying it, how much more effective I am. So now can I flip that script? Can I look at how others are receiving? If I feel, a lot of leaders feel in the culture that you're giving them exactly what they've asked for, you're giving those space, holding space, as Woodson had said, giving that time, but they're not feeling it always. They're still, with the same stories that they've had or the same issues that they've had. And so it's like, why not? Well, how do we get them to receive that good feedback? Recognize how well they're working. And a lot of the tools here really have helped me kind of practice that, both for myself and for the community.
Absolutely. Kim, can we dive into that for just a moment around
Sure.
the outcomes that maybe you were noticing before when you weren't necessarily practicing that awareness and had that openness to recognize the feedback and the recognition? What was happening for you in those moments?
it's such an easy thing, right? It's, oh no, don't no. Oh yeah, that was nothing. Oh yeah, that was just nothing, right? Or downplaying it, or jumping right past to that. Well, it wasn't perfect. You know, that was I could have done this better, or I didn't do this as well. And it's like, well, you know, I'm perfectly imperfect. Did I get to my main intentions? Did I get my conscious efforts though? Where was it? Where did it work, right? Spending a little bit more time on that 80% that went well versus the 20% that did not. And recognizing that I was doing that. I was quickly running through the good stuff and focusing too much on the bad. And then I started to see and petition that with others that I was working with. It seemed to be very, very common that I could say, you know, I could say 10 things that we did really, really well. And we're going to spend the entire hour on the one thing that just missed the mark for whatever reason.
Wow.
And how do we flip that energy, right? Because if you start with that one thing that's so negative, the whole call will go negative. But if we can flip it and start with the energy of what we've accomplished, it just tends to go so much better, much more productively, much more inclusive.
Yeah. And it's not like those hard conversations aren't going to be happening, but you have approached it with an energy of openness and celebration and recognition.
Exactly right.
And I can imagine even that it might be hard to even feel successful or that you're achieving anything or that you even can recognize the good things if you're in a pattern of not being able to slow down to see those things.
Exactly right.
Thanks for going there with me.
Really well it's encapsulated, really good.
Yeah. And we're talking, just to underline a little finer point on that, is we're talking about mental and emotional energy. We're talking about quadrant 2 of the IEP methodology is mental and emotional energy. And you want to look, like a shortcut for all of this is to start to look at, is the way I'm talking to myself, is the way I'm receiving, is the way I'm in relationship, is it creating expansion or contraction? It gets to be that easy. If you start to pay more attention to this, every single thing that we do, we're either creating expansion or contraction in our system, including the way we receive and the way we talk to ourselves. So what you're modeling, Kim, is going from the difference of going, oh no, that's no, it's nothing, which is contraction. And then that adds to self-talk versus receiving, which is actually a leadership skill, which then you get to receive, you become more expansive, and then you get to go and pay that forward. So it becomes even more contagious. Oh,
yes.
It's expansion and contraction. Okay.
That's a great indicator to look for. Yeah, that's great. Anese, will you receive the recognition that your contributions are amazing?
You know what it is? I'm just so it's just so delicious. My mouth is watering throughout this whole thing. I have goosebumps.
Really good.
I want to like hug every single person and just be like, oh my gosh, look what's happening. So
it's
anyway.
really special. I agree. Yeah. Thanks for that. Mick, I know you had mentioned that you had a potential quote to share. Do you have that ready?
Oh, sure. Of course I do.
Okay, great. Otherwise,
well,
I'll,
This is, I'm in my workspace, and I always have, I have this sticky, which says intention, energy, presence, which when you think about this, if you start a meeting and you haven't set your attention for the meeting, right? If you're not setting up how you're going to your presence, the way you're coming across, the energy that you're setting this up. I mean, this is it in one way, it's business 101 and how you should be showing up for every meeting. I put this on my computer because I want it to be a reminder and making sure that I am, pausing and spending that time to remind myself how I'm showing up. The importance of the difference of the book. The one I spend the most time on is Contagious You, but there's a part that I want to remind myself of on a regular basis. It's kind of messy and I might need to get to another one, but the pink one
looks
there's
great.
one that says, do people follow me, work with me, hang out with me, and stay partnered with me because they want to or have to? And when I read that, it's resonated with me so much because I want to make sure the answer is always because they want to. And obviously people report to us because that's the reporting line. And I work really hard every day to make sure that the people that are in my reporting line, that they're there because they want to. And I've always had on a regular basis that I check when I have my check-ins with the team, it's what can I do more of, less of, what do you need from me? That's different. This approach is one that ensures that you are constantly being aware of how you show up, and that you are creating a space that is one that is a safe place for others in your life, and that you're being the best version of yourself. The other piece that is important, because I've not been good at this. I've shown up for my work. I've shown up for my son, but that's I'll show you this, which is, you won't find it on the website, but you'll find it when you work with Anese and Jenny and the team. But it's your ecosystem, and I'd love if you can spend a minute to talk about this, because it shows you, it's a great visual reminder of the fact that you have to show up in your whole self. Many of us will show up for work, or you'll show up for your family, or you might work out once in a while, but there's a whole lot more to that. I think it would be great to talk a little bit about that piece of it, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. Anese, do you want to share a little bit more about the IEP ecosystem?
Absolutely. Thanks for bringing that up, Mick. And I love it. I love your Post-its all over your book and your it's not too much. We'll send you another copy. You wear that one out. Wear that one out. I will send you another one. So the ecosystem. So here's the thing. When we look at, work-life balance, the way that I've always held work-life balance is it's all one life. So we kind of look at work-life balance as people that put really, really heavy guardrails around work-life balance. It's usually because they're having a hard time with their work, or they're having a hard time with their life. So they have to compartmentalize. So our intention is that everything goes together. And so we want people to feel like they can be as energized as possible when they're doing their work, and energized as possible as when they're doing their life. And they don't have to have this big distinction. Of course, there's boundaries and all that. Of course. But one of the things that we found has been really helpful to create more of that, so we can bring our whole selves to the table authentically and not exhaust ourselves, which is what happens when we don't take care of ourselves, is we created the ecosystem. So the IEP ecosystem, when you look at the IEP methodology for organizations, we're looking at your organization from like all your different departments and your executive, like we're looking very holistically. But what's even more important than that, underneath it, is the IEP ecosystem of each individual human being. And we look there at how's their health and well-being, their mental health. One of the things that surprises people when they start doing this work, especially in private work and in our training programs, is the first thing we're looking at is, what does their self-care look like? And they'll go, oh, well, no, I'm here for leadership development and conflict navigation. Awesome. We're going to get to that. That's actually going to be so much easier. We're going to make sure that you are whole first, or at least conscious of your relationship with being whole before we do that. So that ecosystem that Mick showed us has got very personal areas of life that we want to have our attention on. And it is not, I want to be super clear about this, it is never about having everything be a 10. It's never about showing up great all the time. Like we would be irresponsible to even pretend that was what we were going for. We're going for awareness. So that if I've got a 3 in one area of my ecosystem, that actually might be okay right now. I might be choosing a 3 because that's where I need to be, because other things have got priorities, but I want to be in conscious partnership with myself going through it. So I'm at choice of how I navigate it and how I change it if and when I want to change it. And also, if I'm at a 3, I want to be really responsible as a leader of where I may be projecting that onto my people. So that's the ecosystem, both sides. There's organizational, there's team leadership, and then there's your personal ecosystem, and they all work together.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Anese. Woodson, let's bring you into this perspective around what do you notice about the before and the after IEP?
Sure, absolutely. In contagious culture, Anese called it the badge of busy, right? This is something that I still fall prey to. This is something I feel like our organization still falls prey to, and people who are industrious, I think we all fall into this trap. Is that, hey, if we're busy, that means we're doing everything we should be doing. That's good, and I'm really great at what I'm doing because I'm just so busy. But one of the things that was a huge aha moment for me, and something that we constantly revert back to as a team now. But before, busy is causing burnout. Busy is causing stress. Busy is causing contention within teams. Busy causes blame. And when you base yourself self-worth, your professional self-worth or your personal self-worth on busy, it is it's an unhealthy emotion. It's an unhealthy mindset. And what I have seen this work do is that we set our intentions now, right? We are better about our intentions, and busy is busy is a bad word now. It's a 4-letter word. We don't and so we set our intentions and we give ourselves the appropriate amount of space. So and this has already been talked about resetting, giving ourselves space, setting our intentions, and we acknowledge the workload, right? But we reframe what that workload is, and we also create our intentions of what we want our impact to be on that work. And we also acknowledge and give, and it's okay that it may be a big project, it may be a lot of work, it may be something that we feel like is overwhelming, but you have to acknowledge that and you have to meet that where it is, and then you reframe it. And when you can do that, again, like we've talked about, it creates that safe, productive environment for the team to then productively and in a healthy way attack that project. And that's what I've seen, kind of the difference between creating a system of burnout and overwork to where now we're just working as a team. And I'm not saying that we don't fall prey to it, because we're all guilty of doing that. But the IEP method and this methodology allows us to recognize that, reframe, reboot, come back together, and do it again. So that's one of the biggest things I've been able to see, a huge aha moment for us. So.
Yeah, you're really illustrating it so visibly, Woodson. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm hearing the contraction of the language and the mindset and the energy around busy, and the expansion that happens when you're able to reframe that and collectively do that together. One of the examples that comes up for me is I used to say that I have to do something. Oh, I have to do that. Oh, I have to do that. Well, now I get to.
Right.
I'm excited to. I'm looking forward to. And it's not meant to bypass any sort of, tough feelings that I might be having around it, but it certainly creates a lot more openness and sustainability and confidence even in myself in being able to do the thing that I'm getting ready to tackle. So that's great that you're modeling that with everyone.
Busy to me and to us creates an environment of scarcity, right? And
right.
An environment of fear. But when you reframe it, then it just opens up the space.
Absolutely.
And it gives everyone room to work, and it gives people room to breathe, and people room to relax. And that's when you're productive and creative. So
yes. A lot of our work that we do is very attractive to teams that are in creative professions and innovation design teams like that. So I think we can all see why, when you're trying to tap into a well of creative problem solving and taking risks and bringing new ideas into the space, that openness and curiosity versus the diminished contraction that you might be feeling from those older patterns, it's a game changer. Absolutely. Great. Well, sorry, there's a question that I want to make sure that we get to, so I'm going to move to that next. So I'd love to talk a little bit more about what's an actual result that you've experienced personally from working with active choices using the IEP method. And then what's a result that you've experienced in your company that you've seen? And Woodson, I'm actually going to start with you because I know you have a pretty tangible example on the company side, but I'd love to hear your personal experience too.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to start with the company.
Okay, great.
So not very long ago, we were faced with a multi-million-dollar lawsuit, and unfortunately, it was a tragic incident that happened. And we were faced with the lawsuit. I was the corporate representative that had to go and be a representative of the company during the trial. also be on the stand to testify on behalf of the company. Obviously, and one of the things that this taught me, and I'm sorry, it's still raw for me, but
Of course.
when when that type of thing happens, just the tragic nature of what happened, and just what impact that could have on the company.
Yeah.
It puts you somewhere where sometimes, and this work has allowed me to acknowledge that. And kind of a funny thing that happened, I was being taken to the airport, and I got out of the vehicle, and the individual, a member of my team, hands me my bag, rolls my bag to me, hands it to me, and said, "Man, I really would hate to be you right now." He said, I can't imagine what it would be like to have the entire fate of this company on your shoulders.
Oh my gosh.
And kind of says, "We'll see you when you get back," and gets in the car and leaves. And again, just as I was trying to get out of that mindset, it really just brought me back in. And I know that was not his intention. Right.
Totally. Right.
And so I enter the airport in a place of fear and anxiety, and just and I was just not in a good place mentally. And you go through the airport, you go through security, and I feel like I almost was in a daze as I'm going through all this. And I get into the plane, and honestly, I had Anese's book with me, Contagious Culture, and I just start reading, and it just, again, it allowed me to remember, like, hey, this is not your fate. What kind of outcome do you want? What's your intention? What kind of impact do you want to make? What do you have to do? What's your belief system that you have to go into this to have the impact and the result that you want?
Yeah.
And honestly, it brought courage. It brought me back to center, and it gave me courage once again, and it allowed me to set my intentions. And honestly, once I rebooted, once I set my intentions, I walked in every day. This was a 13-day trial. Whether I was on the stand or whether I was sitting there looking at the jury all day long, I was able to connect authentically with that jury, my energy levels. And I just felt at peace with what was going on. I felt in a state of truth, that I felt like what we were there for, we were wrongly accused of what we were being accused for. I believed that to my core. I knew that to be true. I projected that. I worked with my counsel, and connected with them energetically, was part of that team. And honestly, when it all came out, we had a non-guilty verdict, and I can't tell you, that's probably been the largest single professional result. And I know it was just recently, and it's still raw, but it had such an impact on me to where I just knew what we were doing and what this work, just how true it is, and just how real it is, and that you can impact an entire organization, you can impact an entire room, with just how much energy you can bring to the table. You just have to be in that place, and you have to know how to do it. And this work teaches you that.
Yeah, that's so powerful. It's so powerful. Thank you, Woodson. And I'm so grateful that you had been practicing this well before.
Too. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's incredible, because there is such a cumulative effect, and it is a process of re-remembering, because we will fall off the path. We will forget. You had the full human expression of a very stressful situation, and you came back, and that's incredible.
And we were.
Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, just an impact that Anese's work makes is that after we were done, the lead attorney and I, we had a great relationship. We actually just really connected well. We were having a celebratory drink afterwards, right? And he looked at me and he said, "Do you, he said, he's like, are you a leadership coach or something? And I said,
You may as
well,
well be.
I said, no, boy. He's like, you're just so positive all the time.
Mm,
And I was able to tell him, said, you know, I've just learned how to do it through this work, be able to connect with people. And I said, it's just an ongoing learning process always. Because like you said, we stumble and we fall. But again, this work helps you to recognize that quickly, and you know where you're at, or you know where your people are at, and you can reboot, reset, and level up. And that's what's just so great. It's like you get to draw the starting line all the time. You know, you
Yeah.
get to redraw it all the time. So
Yeah, that's great. So inspiring. Anese, anything you want to share about that?
Oh yeah, I just Woodson, I hadn't heard all the details. I'd heard the final outcome and some of the work that you had done to get to that final outcome with how you navigated and using the methodology to move through that time. I hadn't heard the whole of somebody saying to you, like the pressure of somebody saying to you, oh my gosh, the weight of the company is on your shoulders. I wouldn't want to be like, I had a full body reaction to that actually, like the amount of
Yeah.
stress. And I think that a lot of people listening to this, that is really common. A lot of leaders, CEOs, like leaders like CHR, like all of us, like a lot of people, period, no matter what position you're in, actually often will feel like there's so much weight on them. So I just want to acknowledge the authenticity, the fact that you gave yourself full permission to like feel that way, to notice as you're going to the airport, how you're feeling. These are leadership skills you're speaking to. Again, that ability to stay with that feeling, to move through security with that feeling, to let yourself have your feelings, and then to get on the plane and go, huh, okay, what do I want to, how do I want to prepare and take care of myself to move into that? I just want to acknowledge it. And then the other piece is, there is a very tangible, because a lot of people will hear this, and this, we run into this daily. Oh, that's soft stuff. We don't have time for that. Oh, that's really nice. But there was a very, very tangible outcome that you guys got, which was saving some serious money on that suit, and the impact that would have had on the company and on people's jobs, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's a really important thing to be paying attention to, is because you allowed yourself to show up authentically, have your emotion, and you had the awareness to process it, you were able to go in then and for 13 days continue to show up in a way that helped create a positive outcome in the end. And that is, I mean, I want to give you, like, I don't know, some kind of a award or something, but thank you for sharing that. I had not heard that whole story. That was incredible.
Yeah.
no, I appreciate. Thank you for the gift that you've given. So
Thank you.
So I want to move to Kim now. I know you've mentioned how you've used the IEP methodology for your personal life, and then also for yourself and in your role and with your team. What are some of those outcomes that you've been noticing as you've been practicing?
Woodson has hit on the kind of the epiphany one, the one that is the hugest result, right? Where you have something that difficult and you come out the other side and you're still standing and it's had a positive outcome, and you just become deeper a believer in the work. But those little things happen in my job now all the time, right? Where I've had that experience once before, I've applied this new kind of methodologies, and you just watch it go in a whole different way. And, you know, the last dozen or so meetings always went this way. We always had these same issues, and, you know, you do this. And so those little wins too help you build that muscle, right? I think Woodson leaned on it too. It's this practice. You start with yourself, you build in the practice, and then you start to see it get contagious. You watch someone on your team do it with a customer, not understanding what they're doing or where they're doing, but now passing it forward, playing it forward, maybe even using your words. And you're like, huh, you know, this is starting to build. And those little builds are the ones that come back, as well as the big ones, to say, wow, this is super impactful, and I need to build my muscle more. I need to stay close to it. And if I start to feel myself or us getting too far off, let's go back to it. Let's pull out a practice. Let's think of it. And again, it's me personal doing the work, and then communicating some of the energy from that to my teams, and encouraging them to do the same thing, passing out the book and talking about it more and more, because I think it's just such a wonderful way to move forward with your path, and practice. That practice is what leadership is, right? It's not, you're gonna wake up one day and it's all gonna work and it's gonna stay that way forever. It just doesn't work that way as much as we intend. And these heavy things are gonna hit us in what we do, especially in the jobs and the roles that we all have here. It's tough work. not easy stuff. And so to be able to kind of go through one after another and still stand, like the waves of the ocean, and still stand and happy and come to work and be able to continue to deliver is the kind of the results that you kind of soft and large that you want to have.
Yeah, Kim, what really stands out to me is just your resilience, just your resilience and groundedness in the work that you're doing, even if the situation is, not predictable or is something that's challenging, being able to stick with it, even if it's a small amount, and starting to see those results has been really evident in the work that you've done. Yeah. I want to turn to Mick now. So I'd love to hear, because you have a unique perspective of working with several different groups with the IEP methodology. I'd love to hear what those outcomes have looked like from your perspective, but then also alluding to what would you say to another senior leader who is considering working and doing this type of work with active choices?
Well, I would say, definitely, without question, get off your ass and just do it, because you're wasting time. Less directly, I think when you think about the cost of disengagement, Anese talks about this, and I think it would be helpful to elaborate on that.
That's great.
Because when you think about and she articulated really well about the difference between engagement and energy, and being ahead of that. And when you think about the fact that all of us, and I believe this very strongly, that we're all leaders, and the fact that awareness of where we all stand is and where the culture is very powerful. There's a very a material difference between having words on a wall to say this is our mission statement, this is what our culture is, and whether you do this top down or bottom up. If you have what I mean by that is, if the senior leadership team says this is our culture and puts it out on a memo and says, okay, here's our statement, or if you have a committee where it's a grassroots thing that says, okay, this is the employee base and they put this together. The culture has to be a living, breathing organizational structure of what you do every day. And one of the things I'm really proud of is, in our organization, every Tuesday we have an all hands meeting, and we talk about behaviors that underpin this every Tuesday, and that the principles and how we're applying that in a live example on a regular basis. And it's really a component of a distinct difference of what ACI does, is it takes that and it applies to a business imperative that everyone needs to be aware of. I think it would be good to elaborate on that a little bit, because it is a financial impact if you're not paying attention to it. So what do you think about spending a bit of time on that piece of it? Because everyone's losing money if they're not paying attention to that piece of it.
Yeah, I think that's a great thing to bring into the conversation here. Anese, what would you like to share on that to start? Yeah, let's pull a thread. Yeah.
Okay, let's pull a thread. All right, so let's pull a thread. So, well, I'm just going to pull a couple threads at the same time, and then we'll get to a big thread. So, it's funny. I had a consult with a company yesterday, and one of their biggest challenges right now is they have people quiet quitting, and they're starting to find out that people are doing multiple jobs,
like having full-time jobs at the same time. Yeah,
like full-time jobs. And so we got in this big conversation around, like, well, what's actually creating quiet quitting? And I think so there's quiet quitting, there's the epidemic of busy, there's a lot of different things we could talk about. But when I look at quiet quitting, because I know this is something that people are seeing a lot, and the lack of engagement moving. In fact, engagement this year dropped. So engagement kind of bumped up a little bit. I think it was last year, and then it's dropped again. I'll come back to quiet quitting because it's all related. But if you look at the most recent numbers, a lack of engagement is costing us in the United States alone, like billions and billions of dollars. I don't even try and keep up with the numbers anymore because they keep shifting, but it's billions. And when you look at how much time is lost each week, the average business leader loses 7.47 hours a week Okay, 7.47 hours a week due to poor communication, having to rework, having to repeat. We have one little echo. Can we just hit a mute if you're not on right now? Okay, there you go. Thank you so much. Tech gremlins. So if the average leader from rework and having to recommunicate, well, that 7.47, that's a day. That is a day. When people are quiet quitting, or when they are working multiple jobs and they're not being transparent, like I'm not actually against people doing extra things. I just want the honesty around it. Like, let's talk about what's actually happening. But when they're not doing that, there's a way you're losing money. You're losing money. And there's also your resources aren't being used well. And so now there's an incongruent energy in your organization. So we can look at it from that, and that could take me down a totally different path. But let me come back to this thing around engagement. Mick, their most recent research shows that 55% of people 52% of people who exit their companies say that their company could have done something about it to make them not want to leave. 52%. But of those 52%, only 1 out of 3 actually communicate anything to their leaders before they leave. This is the one that gets me like every time, because what that means is you have so many regrettable loss of people that left that didn't tell you. And a lot of the reason why they're leaving, 50% of them are leaving because of their relationship with their managers and their leaders, which circles us back to engagement, which then circles us back to engagement actually isn't the problem. It's the energy underneath engagement that is creating that problem. So if you've got all these great leaders and they've got their values are on the walls, and we're going to do karaoke night, and we're going to do town halls, and we're going to do all this stuff, but the leaders aren't showing up well, and they're not coming to the table with good intentions, energy, presence, and clean. It has to be clean. We talk a lot in this work about clean intentions, energy, and presence. If they're not doing that, then now you have your doing culture versus actually being it, and you're doing engagement versus actually activating the energy that is necessary for true people to want to stay and not quiet quit, because they're connected to purpose. They're energized by what they're doing. They feel connected to their leaders. And oh, by the way, quiet quitting is contagious too, because the minute I start to quiet quit, then George is like, oh, well, she's not really doing very much work. So, why am I working so hard? And now we've got another epidemic that we're going to be dealing with, which I think we're actually already there. So Mick, is there anything that you heard me say that I'm not speaking to? Yeah.
No, I think that's exactly it. And what I really want to people to really get away from, and I had posted myself on this and did an article in the last few months about this, is when people think about any of this as soft skills or nice to have. It is not. Yeah. All of this is part of business criticality and the component for success. And if you want to call it something, call it power skills, call it, it's something that we all need to do to show up to be successful.
Yeah. We have a group, they've started calling it deep capabilities, because, they wanted to get away from soft skills, but then they felt like power skills was too trendy, but they don't necessarily want to run around the big company saying energy, 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 which, some people it will work for them, some people it won't. So they're talking about it as deep capabilities.
That's great.
I like that.
Yeah. This is a good transition into our final question, because one of the things that we were chatting about in our practice room was around when we are putting ourselves out on this cutting edge, when we are being the ones who are creating the revolution, when we are leading against the status quo, sometimes that can be, a lonely place to be. It's really great to be in community with each other and to be able to have these conversations and talk about that. So that's one method that we can be using to make sure that we're not feeling like we're alone, that we are together on this, that we can learn together. And yet it's likely that we're going to interact with someone who is going to resist this. And so what's everyone's perspective on what happens when you want to be creating this positive change, but you meet that resistance? How do you approach that and what's your perspective on it? Who feels compelled to start? Woodson, go for it.
Yeah, I can do that. So I run into that quite often. In the transportation field.
Yeah.
It's kind of a tough, gritty, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. We're gonna get the work done, and and from the top down, and that's just kind of how the industry is.
Yeah.
However, I think the first step that the biggest opportunity for change and impact that I've been able to see is that how I start is when I feel and I come against a resistor, is to be able to connect to them authentically, because obviously when you believe in something so passionately and you run into somebody who believes opposite so passionately, it creates a wedge, a rub, right? And you almost get offended by that. Like, how can you, because you have this truth and this knowledge, and you want so bad to impart it to somebody, and you can choose to be offended by that. And if you and you allow yourself to go there, that you can actually create even if you try to impart this type of this work onto somebody, it's not authentic.
Yeah.
So what I tried to do is I take a step back, I meet that person where they are, and I find something that I truly appreciate and honor about that individual, a quality of theirs. And I come from that place. And oftentimes what I have been able to do, I'm not always successful, of course, but I find that area, that space of appreciation, that space of what I honor about that individual.
Mm-hmm.
And then I take us to that place, and I can create a space there where I can bring us to that place and say, hey, do you remember when we did this? Or do you remember when this happened? Or do you remember how fun this was? Or how productive we were when we were doing X? And they will always say, oh, absolutely, because they felt that too.
Yeah.
And then I can say, well, what kind of impact did you have? Or how did you feel? How are we present together? And again, we're not calling this energy. We're not calling this, fluffy. You bring it to wherever they're at the time, and you pace and lead, and you bring people to that feeling, and then you can bring them to that action. You can bring them to that place of where they were and how they felt and the impact that they felt they made and the outcome that had happened from that. And then you can bring them back around and say, well, this is how we're able to do that. And how did that feel when you did that? And that's all I'm trying to do. I'm trying to help us do that together more frequently. And and people don't resist that because it's genuine.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, wow. That really demonstrated it a lot, Woodson. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm hearing you connecting with the energy first, because the logic is potentially the thing that is creating the crevasse in between you. So by connecting to that energy first, even if you're using the same logic and the same words, they're actually able to see it from that point of view once you're able to go there with them. That's really, really interesting.
Yeah, I love how you create the space for that, because then from there you can also move into the 5 magical questions that are in the IEP work, which is basically getting really curious with someone without making them wrong. So you have to have the right IEP when you do this. You have to have the right intentions when you use these 5 questions. So those 5 questions are you having the impact you want to have? Yes or no? Do you feel the way you want to feel? Yes or no? Do people follow you because they want to, or they have to? And if you can get them to start to think about, they may not say what that's really true, but you're going to plant a seed. Let's see, what is it? How are you, are you living in alignment with your core values? And then what is the culture you're actually creating? If you can gently plant those seeds, and that's what we've found to be really helpful when there's, first of all, with resistance, the first answer is just be it. If you're forcing it, you're talking, Woodson, also about the difference between being an invitation. So, the invitation, when we show up well and we're coming from expansive energy and we're holding our space. So it's not about like getting sucked into what's happening, but we're holding our space and we're showing up well. that becomes an invitation, because then people around us go, oh gosh, I don't know what's happening, but I feel better when I'm having this conversation with Mick. And I just had a really hard conversation with Mick, and I walked out of that hard feedback conversation, or I walked out of, like whatever might have happened, and I actually feel good still. So that is contagious in itself. So it
Yes.
can be an invitation, and then you can actually offer a coaching conversation around, are you having the impact you want to have? Do you feel the way you want to feel? Most people cannot answer all those questions like yes, 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 yes. There's, if we're honest, we always want to have more impact. And if we're honest, there's often going to be something that we're not happy about. So you can then be an invitation to go, there might be something for you to look at then here with the way that you're showing up. What do you think that that would be?
Yeah.
So that has been one of the most effective. And I think we're having a learning lab next quarter or this quarter on using IEP with other people. And it got inspired because we had so many people in companies doing it. And then their leaders wouldn't want to do it, or their people wouldn't want to do it. And so we actually created a lab for them to teach them, how do you do this in a way that doesn't make anybody wrong,
Right.
but it actually invites them to really look at what's true for themselves, so they can shift however much they want to shift authentically.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful wisdom. Thank you for sharing that, Anese. Mick, what shows up for you when we talk about the resistance, le resistance?
I think we all, I love what Anese just articulated, and I think we all will continue to come across this. I find that oftentimes people just want to be heard. And
Yeah.
so pausing, showing that you're listening, letting people fully articulate their perspective, not interrupting, gets you a long way. And then just moving forward with the IEP. So I don't want to repeat anything that's already been said. I just find that the listening piece gets you a long way.
Yeah, I would echo that as well. Even if there is an outcome that the person you're interacting with doesn't agree with or doesn't like, being able to be there and listen to them wholeheartedly and really help them feel heard can help to diffuse the tension, I find.
It makes a difference. And
Yes.
that more so too comes obviously when they're peers. When it's my team, it's a different story, I think, because everyone knows that they have a voice with everything. So it's not siloed, right? So I've had very different and distinct departments. Everyone knows that they have a voice across all to state what they think, give their opinion, give guidance, to make sure that they have a say in what we're doing. It doesn't mean we're going to necessarily do it, but I know that I want to be able to have a voice in matters across the organization. I think that piece does go a long way, just to make sure that everyone feels that they're a part of it, a part of the bigger process.
Yeah, and you're really illustrating the proactivity that you all created, in the way that your culture operates and the agreements that you've created together and that expectation that you've set. So that's great to hear. Love it. Thanks, Mick. All right. And Kim, what would you like to share as far as your perspective of resistance?
Feeding off of the other two, brilliantly presented and shared. I just add the patience. This is a practice. This takes patience. The going slow to go fast. I loved Woodson's pace and lead, right? Meet them where they are with the curiosity, the full clean energy, your whole heart, and then take it where you can and step back and let it go. Let it go. Have the pace to not internalize it, not to overplay it. Just leave it there, and then come back again. Lean in that persistence. So for me, it's patience, curiosity, and persistence. Just take a step back, but come back again. Let's try this again. Let's meet them where they are. Let's see where we can go another step, and just gear myself in that process, and then coming back and doing it again. And it's been a really, really beautiful learning. And then we get that progress. We get those moments where we feel we actually are getting places despite all of the other things happening. That keeps you kind of going, okay, it's working. Let's build some more momentum. Let's get up and do it again. So I just add that to it.
I love it. You get to reflect and actually see those wins. That's great. Yeah. Anese, anything you would like to share as we're starting to close down the discussion today?
I think this is just so beautiful. I think there's so much gold that's been shared on this call. And I think that Kim, what you just shared is such a beautiful place to start to wind us down, because it does take time. Behavior change takes time, transformation takes time, culture change makes time. The only thing that's really constant is change. So we have to get better at being able to navigate the waves of change and then also be patient at the same time, but then also be really responsible for how we show up in it. And so
Mhm.
culture change isn't going to get changed in a 90-minute webinar. It's not going to get changed just because you read a book, but it does shift when you do the things that we're talking about here as a community. It's pretty cool.
Absolutely. And culture change is up to us. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it is.
at any level.
It is.
Beautiful. All right. Well, with that, I want to thank our panelists, deep gratitude for sharing our space today, for showing up and sharing all of your unique perspectives. And for those of you who are here with us or watching the recording, thank you so much for sharing your time with us. We'd love to hear what takeaways you are taking from today's discussion. So feel free to email us. You can email us at info@activechoices.com. And if you'd like to learn more or connect with our panelists, I'll share some links that everyone's comfortable with to share in the replay here today. So I just want to echo that here at Active Choices Inc., we offer a variety of pathways. If this is something that you or your company are interested in pursuing, we have training pathways, experiential keynotes, membership offerings. And so if you'd like to stay connected, we're going to offer several different ways to do that. As of this recording, we have an open house coming up on May 2nd. So you can learn a little bit more about how you and your company can learn and use the IEP method to support your company culture. So we'll put the registration link there, or you'll be able to request the recording if it's already passed by the time you're watching this. We also have a new ebook that Anese has created and that I've created around the top 3 company culture blind spots and insights. And Anese recorded some really lovely videos that go along with that. So if you'd like to download that, you can find it at activechoices.com/subscribe. And if you're ready and you would love to have a connection call, we would love to talk with you. So you can schedule a connection call and we'll discuss your unique opportunities and explore the options together. You can go do that on our website at activechoices.com/contact. All right. And with that, I will close down our space for today. Again, deep gratitude to you all for sharing and co-learning in our space today. I really, really appreciate it. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Honor. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.